So now that the transmission mount is pretty much wrapped up, I'll probably do another pass on the top of both of these. The mount itself was kind of rounded on the corners, so it made it kind of hard to weld. I had to kind of do a fill weld and then weld on top of it. I'll probably, like I said, I'll do one more pass on that probably because it didn't get up into there very well. But for right now, it's good. So now we're trying to mock up the pedals now. I pretty much sold them doing the 34s. I think those are going to be a lot easier than doing the 36s. The mounting, like I said before, the mounting on the 36 actually goes through the frame, so the mounting bracket is like right here. So it's kind of a pain. The 34s mount to the frame, or the X member, whatever you want to call it. So that's going to make it quite a bit easier. This is the reference point to where the pedals are going to be in the car, and they both clear the frame. They're a little bit too high. It's supposed to be about 8 inches off the frame. These are a little over 9, but I'll just heat it and bend it down a little bit and it'll be fine. Or it might actually be okay. I don't know. Until we get the body back on. Try it. I don't really know. But they clear the frame, they clear the motor. So I mean, the steering column will fit right through there. So I think these are going to be the path of least resistance. This is the clutch arm. So we'll have to do a step in the linkage, but still, it's pretty easy to do. That'll be the rod for the brakes, and that should run right over the top of that and right into here. Just drill a hole in that, and the rod could go right through there. So like I said, right now I've just got it clamped in place. It's hanging a little bit lower than I'd like. So I'm still gonna go with the X member type setup. However, it's gonna be a lot shorter than what I'd planned. I was kind of thinking of going up into here more, and it's not gonna work with these pedals because of the angle. So my plan right now is to come off of here, go straight out, kick here at this angle, come into the frame, and then run inside the frame for a bit. So it's going to be a pretty short piece. I did a little quick drawing on it right here, just showing about 5.5 inches straight, then a bend, and then it's going to come back into the frame. This is probably 10 or 11 inches. So I'm just doing rough cuts on it right now. And where this is hanging low, I'm going to have to cut out a section of the bottom flange. This will hang down, and I'll add, 2 or 3 inches or whatever it needs. Put the flange back on, put sides on the flange so it kind of boxes it in. And that'll mount to the side of that. And on top of that, I'm going to take this plate, probably cut it down, and probably weld it to the bracket here. And there's a hole on the front of the transmission mount. And I'll run a bolt through that, so it'll secure it there too. So it'll be good and sturdy with it secured up here, secured to the frame and there. So it should be really good for that. So I'm going to start working on that cross piece there. I got a piece cut. I think I did an overall of like 22 inches. 5.5 inches in, I did a relief cut on both of the flanges so I can bend it. So I'll do some adjustments here. Should probably actually check that angle. That'd be a lot easier than going back and forth 14 times. Got all the fancy tools here. So that's roundabouts, what we want for an angle. And I'll do something to reinforce that when the time comes. Oh. That's pretty close. So that'll butt up against the transmission mount. That'll ride along the pedals. Somewhere up in here it'll run into the frame. We'll kick it back, section it a little bit so it can run inside the frame, and that'll hold all that pretty steady, hopefully. The idea with this is it's going to tie in to the side of the transmission mount here, come across at an angle, the pedals will mount to that, then it'll come into the frame here, and I'm not sure if I'm going to bolt or weld that. Quickly realizing that trying to make all this stuff bolt in is taking way too much time, so I may just cut these out a little bit more so that the transmission can be pulled out with this in place, and I may just weld this in and weld these in. It'd be a lot quicker. So the idea with this, it's going to sit in there like that. Again, probably get welded in there. I'm going to section a little bit out of this. It'll sit into the frame. This cut actually lines up perfect with the front side of this. I'm going to put a plate in there. The idea with that is that plate will sit right here and will bolt through there. This angled piece will bolt to the angled part on this. And then where this is cut out on the bottom, I'm going to lower that since the pedals have to sit lower than where this is. So we'll bring that down to probably here. I'll add a piece in there, put the flange back on it. And then the bottom of the pedals right there, there's 2 bolt holes. Those will go through that flange. So it'll be well secured to that, so that won't be an issue. All right, we got our pedal cross member pretty well cut down, trimmed to where I think it'll fit. That's going to tuck up in the frame, and that's that recessed section out of the bottom of the pedals are going to go. Let's get it clamped in here, see if we can make it sort of kind of fit, maybe. Good up in there. That plate will sit in there. Pretty close. These have to sit a little bit lower. Probably down in there somewhere. Get these in here and maybe. Just gonna hit that now. There's the frame, hits the bottom of the frame rail, but that's not gonna, certainly not gonna go that far. But that's our reference line to where the pedals are gonna sit at rest. Let me check the height on those. Pretty sure we'll have to bend these down a little bit. I think they're going to be too high. We can get fairly close. So they're 9.5. They want to be right around 8. So we'll probably have to heat and bend this down a little. Depending on where it sits, it's probably going to hit the firewall. But maybe be able to drop these down a little more too. Let's take a look. No, I don't think I can because we'll get too low and the rod won't clear this because you have the brake rod running back to here. So I think we're probably as low as we're going to be able to get. Take a closer look at what we got going on here. It's a little hard to see in there, but clamped up to the side of the frame. It's hanging down a little bit from the frame. It's just the way it's going to be. Like I said, we'll put this plate in here, attach it to there, attach it to the pedals, weld it into that. You see underneath, it's hanging down a little bit here. So I'll come down the piece that I cut off there, re-weld it. And actually, I was just looking, this is the piece that I cut off that I was going to re-weld, but I just found this, that I cut off another piece, which is actually the exact same length, and already has all of the height on it. So I can probably just cut like a 1/2 inch out of that, weld it back in there instead of having to scab a piece in. And that'll give a lower support for that. And probably tie into the frame a little better as well. So it should be plenty strong once we get it all secured in there. And I think everything's going to line up pretty well. They seem to clears that frame rail just barely. The steering wheel fit right through here. I don't think we'll have to bend them sideways at all. And you got plenty of throw in your brake pedal. Again, the rod's going to run back. I'll blow a hole in this. It'll tie back into the linkage under here once I figure all that out. Then our clutch is going to be, see, that's at rest. So it's going to be right about there and there. So just do a slight offset on the clutch linkage. That should hook right up. I don't think there's going to be any interference issues with that. So I think we're on the right track. So before I go any further with the pedal mount, I'm going to make the other side of the X member. So this is the rest of that piece of frame I've been using. What's nice is, well, I say nice, but I ran out of straight section, so it comes into the taper. I think that'll actually work out okay, because this is the pedal bracket. Obviously I had to cut the end off here to fit it into the frame. We're already into the taper on this. I think I may still have to cut a little bit, but so this will be the top rail. The bottom's going to taper up just like I cut the bottom on this side. So I'm just going to mirror this. Obviously there's not going to be anything mounted to it. Probably hang the exhaust off of it or something, but we'll just mirror this thing. It shouldn't take long to make that. And we can both set in there and try to measure this thing out here. Now, this is the piece that sets into the frame. I would have liked to have had this longer, except the front body mount's like right here. I didn't want to get up into that and end up having issues with trying to get a nut in there. And so we're going to do that. Like I said, if I end up welding it in, it's not going to matter anyway, which is probably the route we're going at this point. So just get an overall length of this thing, and then I'll cut it to that length and we'll call it good. 18.5. Alright, I'll cut that down to length. So like I said, at this point I'm just going to try to mirror this thing. So that's like that. This sits like this. Doesn't want to stick up. Essentially like that and that. So do some marks here. This one really doesn't matter. There's nothing mounted to it. There's no pedals. Like this one's a little more critical because you want the angle of the pedals right. This, I'm just making it to make it look the same. It really doesn't serve much purpose other than probably hanging the exhaust off it. So. Yeah, 5.5. 5.5 to center. And that was bending out, so that's not going to matter. And then we went about 10 inches from there. There. And we pie cut that. So that's, those are just cuts. That's a pie cut. All right. That should get us pretty close. And actually, let's go see if that fits inside the frame. So that does fit inside the frame up until about here. I probably should have cut this whole thing down further and I wouldn't have had to section this at all, but too late now. So we'll do our pie cuts, get it bent, and see where it sits from there. Yep, one more cutting. So this passenger side piece is almost finished up here. Got the hole cut in it to go into that hole for the speedometer cable. This is just tacked back in place. It's pretty decent. I'll finish that up. And we gotta make some little plate pieces for up in here just to kind of close that up. Gonna sit pretty much like that. So I'm working on the driver's side a little bit now. Let's run over there. A lot more going on this side. This is backwards, but there we go. So obviously I had to section this piece because it has to sit inside the frame rail. So it was this height. I cut some out of that. Just tacked it back on a few minutes ago. It's still pretty hot. Just trying to fit that, make sure it fits in the frame rail. It seems to. I'll make a piece to fill that in with. And then in here is going to be where the pedals hang down. So I still need to get a rough measurement on that. And I'll put that piece in. We'll make some side pieces, kind of box it in. And we'll close this up. And this side should also be ready to rock and roll. It's going to sit in there pretty much like that. The pedals are going to mount there. I do something for a plate here to mount the back side of the pedals. And then the bottom of the pedals again will bolt to that piece that's going back in there, but we're starting to get there. So I haven't been doing a very good job of filming this. I've been trying to just tear away on this thing because I'm so far behind on it. But I'm going to stop real quick and give you guys an update. Getting the pedals mounted to that X-member bracket thing. Got 3 bolts in it already. I'm going to plate the back of this. Put one more bolt in it. That's what this piece is right here. So I drilled a hole already. It's going to line up with that bolt hole right there. I'll get that bolted together, then I'll get that welded into here, and that'll give 4 points of securing, 2 on this side, 1 on the back, 1 on the bottom. That should be plenty strong enough for that. So we'll do a final fit on this, make sure everything's good, and then I gotta fix these corners, and we'll be ready to weld this in, weld the other side in. Hopefully be making a little bit of progress on this thing. Well, I think this side's pretty much finished up here. Made a little piece and weld that in there, weld that up there. Again, not trying to make it the prettiest thing in the world, just trying to make it work, and I think this will work just fine. Welded that back piece in there, bolted through that. So we got 4 bolts holding this thing in from 3 different sides. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. So I'm going to grab the other side, make that corner piece for that, and that should be good to go after that too. So I'm just using a cast off piece of frame rail here, just cutting little patches out of that. This is the passenger side frame rail, X-member piece. That's a little piece I cut out of that other thing. So I'm just going to clamp it in here, get it welded in and ground down. I'll do the same thing down here on the bottom. We'll get a piece put in there. That should pretty much wrap this thing up. Well, since I've neglected filming a lot of this, I figured I'd show you all real quick just what I do to make these little patch things. Pretty basic. So like I said, just have a piece of scrap frame rail I was using. Same thickness as that. And it just so happens that this is the piece I cut off of the other side, but this one actually seems to fit pretty well. So I think I just cut that to length and it'll fit right in there well enough to weld it. But all I do is set it up underneath there, find one common edge so you don't have to cut all 3 sides, obviously. Just cut 2 of them, but this one I think I'm just going to have to cut 1. But, well, maybe not. You have to grind down one side a little bit. But either way, just set it underneath, you know, mark it how you want it. Cut it out, you may have to fit it a little bit. Obviously, the black line is the inside edge, so you want to cut to the outside of the black line or you're going to have too small of a piece. But to get you pretty close, you may have to take the sander tool a little bit and shape it, but it's close enough to weld it. So I'm going to cut that off, see if it'll fit. We'll go from there. Give that a test fit. a sander to the edges of that a little bit, make it fit a little bit better. It's pretty decent now. It's definitely weldable. So it's still ridiculously hot. So try to play the shuffle game here and go from pliers to vice grips and see if we get to stay in there. It's pretty close. Should be able to hold it enough to tack it there and make it work. What I do with these is I run the welder like a notch higher than where it should be. Just do a series of tacks and let it cool a little bit. That way you get a real good deep burn on that without putting a ton of heat into the whole thing. So I'll let that cool off for a minute and I'll just fill in the gaps and let the grinder to it. It should be good. Both sides pretty much finished up. Not going to win any beauty contests, but it's plenty good enough for this old turd. So, get that corner all done. That corner's all done. It's all welded up and ground down. So, it should work fine. I should be ready to clean these ends up and weld this thing in. So, here is the, I think, last mock-up. Everything seems to fit well. This side is obviously not much going on. This side with the pedals in, pedals seem to clear everything. Hits the bottom of the rail, but it's not going to go that far anyway as long as it clears the top, which it does. This one clears the engine, so I think we're all good. Like I said, I got 4 bolts holding that in now. That should be plenty strong enough on all 3 sides. I don't see that going anywhere. So I got all the edges cleaned up, and I think we're ready to get all this stuff welded in here and